is that next video I was going to talk about, called about the Dunning-Kruger effect. But simply, the Dunning-Kruger effect is when you overestimate how good you are at something, how much you know about something, when you know almost nothing about it at all. And the thing is that in order to gauge your own ability at something, you have to already be kind of good at it, or know enough about it to be able to tell whether or not you're good or bad. The thing is with the Dunning-Kruger effect is they don't know the thing that's in question enough to be able to gauge their own abilities at the thing, but they've done it a little bit to the point where they think that they're really good at it. So I'm going to criticize two groups who I think do this a lot. And I have to say, in line with my last video, that nearly everyone is vulnerable to the Dunning-Kruger effect, as nearly everyone is vulnerable to making fallacies. And by the way, someone in the last video made a comment that's important. It's important to remember that just because you have a fallacy in your argument doesn't mean your conclusion is false. You can have a true conclusion and everything you say could be true, but your argument be just horrible and fallacious. You could just make nothing but true statements and your argument's still a fallacy. That's important to keep in mind. But anyway, the two groups that make the Dunning-Kruger effect really bad, the first one is libertarians. Now, I used to be a libertarian, so I used to really do this a whole lot. And I'm not saying all libertarians are doing this, the same intensity. Some don't do it, some do it a lot. And almost all libertarians do this when it comes to economics. They know a little bit about economics. They've read some Austrian economics books. They listen to like 100 hours of podcasts about Austrian economics, but they're not good enough at economics to be able to gauge their own understanding or level of expertise at it. But they overestimate their expertise and see themselves as experts of economics to the point to where they think that they can run the whole freaking economy. They should be in office implementing Austrian economics. But they're totally doing the Dunning-Kruger effect. They're not experts just because they've spent a whole lot of time on the internet studying Austrian economics. So they overestimate their own abilities here. And the libertarians who follow pseudo-philosophers like Ayn Rand and Stefan Molyneux, which I used to be really big into both of those, so I'm talking from experience here, they are very much committing the Dunning-Kruger effect, or under the influence of such an effect, when it comes to philosophy. They don't know philosophy very well, but they know what Ayn Rand and Molyneux say under the flag of philosophy. So they end up seeing themselves as really, really good as experts of philosophy, and to a point where they can say philosophy. And both Molyneux and Rand saw themselves as being messiahs of philosophy, like they can fix the whole thing. But the thing is that if you know enough philosophy, you can know that both of them are really bad at philosophy. But they really overestimate their abilities at philosophy. They see themselves as really, really good at it. And I can give you tons of proof that Molyneux is really bad at philosophy, like not being able to distinguish between ethical and psychological egoism, not understanding thought experiments, it's just really bad. Like if you spend some time reading philosophy and then listen to a Molyneux video, and you will cringe. It's very cringeworthy. So yes, very bad. Now the second group are people who are against philosophy. And when I say against philosophy, I don't mean just a little bit critical. I mean, they think it's all a waste of time, even if they do things that are similar to philosophy. In fact, anti-philosophers do philosophy all the time, but call it science or something like that. But the reason why they're often under the Dunning-Kruger effect, these anti-philosophers, almost all of them, is that it becomes clear in any conversation with them that they don't know what philosophy is. They have no idea. They haven't spent any amount of effort trying to understand what philosophy even is before attacking it. So I might lose some people, some subscribers at this point, but Neil DeGrasse Tyson is a very smart guy who's under the effects of the Dunning-Kruger effect when it comes to the topic of philosophy. He doesn't understand philosophy, as was proven by the fact that he doesn't understand thought experiments. He brought up a thought experiment and he was like, well, why don't they just build some sort of engineering device that gets them out of the problem? That's not the point. The point of a thought experiment is to test abstract ideas in an abstract area of space. So you can't really test ethics in the real world. You have to test them in these thought experiments, these sort of extreme situations. And by the way, if a person's response to a thought experiment is, but that'll never happen to me in real life, that person is bad at philosophy and doesn't know philosophy at all and should, I don't know, study or something. So yes, Neil deGrasse Tyson doesn't know philosophy, but he attacks it. He attacks philosophy, and he says it's not worth your time at all, and you shouldn't ever take a philosophy class. So he attacks philosophy as if he knows what it is. He attacks philosophy as if he's an expert on it. So that seems to be a clear example of him overestimating his own understanding of philosophy. While he knows very little, but he doesn't know philosophy well enough to be able to accurately gauge his own expertise at philosophy. Neil deGrasse Tyson is definitely under the effects of the Dunning-Kruger effect here as it comes to philosophy. And nearly every person I've ever talked to who's against philosophy is under the Dunning-Kruger effect. Very many people, I get the impression that there's an attitude that if they can't understand something within 5 minutes, that must mean it's all BS. Or they like halfway kind of heard about philosophy once and they're totally against it, and they totally think that they know everything there is to know about philosophy and that it's all BS. Or at the very least, they think they know it enough to know that it's BS. Now, before I end, I'll bring up another example of someone who's like, philosophy's bad because what the Greek philosophers said was a long, long time ago. Well, there's been a whole lot of work done in philosophy since ancient Greeks, and philosophy isn't just whatever the ancient Greeks said. So there's an example of someone who thinks they know philosophy enough to attack all of philosophy, but who doesn't because they're overestimating their abilities. They're under the influence of the Dunning-Kruger effect. Now, YouTube videos are supposed to be very short, so this is the end of this video. Goodbye.